Let's talk about some over-unders here, Rohan, because we are going to look deeper at the Western Conference, which is going to be just a street fight every single night. Outside of Portland, you've really got 14 of the 15 teams that are coming into this season anticipating competing for something, whether it's the play-in, the playoffs, a championship, whatever. You've got a really tough go of it in the Western Conference. I want to start with the LA Lakers, who are everybody's most interesting team right now. The Lakers... odds makers have the Lakers at 42.5 over-under wins. So the odds makers have the Lakers finishing slightly above 500 this season. What do you think of that?
First of all, shout out to the odds makers because you sent me some of the teams we're talking about, and every single one of these numbers I looked at, and I was like, that's a good number. This is why I'm not a betting man, was looking at these numbers. So shout out to the odds makers. They did a great job. So for context, the Lakers won 47 games last year. And that was with, I think, Anthony Davis playing 76 games or over 70 games. LeBron James was completely healthy. This is a good number because I think the Lakers are going to be worse than last year. I have a hard time believing they're going to get the help that they got from LeBron and AD last year. And I know Lakers fans are, convinced that they had a massive coaching upgrade. This just happens every time you get a new coach. And I think JJ Redick is going to do a great job. He's someone who's clearly, incredibly prepared for this, really wants to do this, has great mentors, etc. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when Darvin Ham was the greatest coach in the world because he turned the Lakers around from that terrible start they had 2 seasons ago and got them to the Western Conference Finals.
That was 12 months ago. That time was 12 months ago.
Yes, and everyone was talking about how, actually that wasn't a sweep by the Nuggets. Every game was very close. You can't blame the Lakers for getting swept, blah, blah, blah. Like, I remember when Darvin Ham was sliced bread in Los Angeles, and now it's this guy had his hands in his pockets too much. We got to get JJ Redick on there. Look, JJ Redick's talking about pick and roll coverages in his sideline interview with this coaching upgrade. Can't be talked about enough. But having said all that, if I had to bet, I think I'm going to go the slightest under here. You said 42.5. I could see it being 42. I could see it being 41. I just think it's going to be very difficult for LeBron and AD to stay healthy. They didn't have a deep playoff run, but they also both played in the Olympics. It's just, that's really what I'm banking on. And it sucks to kind of bank on that. It sucks to be the guy that's like, well, I don't think they're going to stay healthy, but I know that Jared Vanderbilt was hurt. Gabe Vincent was hurt last year, but they got a lot of health from LeBron and AD last year and weren't super inspiring. If that goes south in any way this year, I could see them being a lot worse.
Sorry, so I'm going to go half a win over there and take 43. So I'm taking the over on 42.5. I still think they finished with less wins than they did last season. I'm a believer in AD shaking some of those injury issues. Now, we're never going to get back the AD from like early New Orleans days where he was a consistent 70-plus game type of player. But I think we're at the point health-wise where I feel cautiously optimistic that 65-70 is the range for Anthony Davis. I think LeBron's going to get a boost this year with Bronny around. I do. I think there's going to be just kind of an injection of something, just sort of enthusiasm, vitality. I think you're going to see a really fired up LeBron James going into this year. So I think those two guys are maybe not going to be exactly what they were last year, but I think they're going to be relatively close to it. I love what I'm hearing about Gabe Vincent with that team. I think Gabe Vincent, who gave them virtually nothing last year, got hurt very early in the season, never really got his legs.
And was a celebrated signing. If they got the Gabe Vincent that the Heat got in the 2023 playoffs, that's a good piece for them.
I agree. So I think that's going to help them. Jared Vanderbilt, the fact that he's not back yet gives me reason for concern. But if they can get him back sometime in the first month, that is another versatile defensive player that they can add. And maybe I'm reading too much in the preseason, Rohan, but I am a full-blown Connect head right now. Like, I am in on Dalton Connect, who I saw in person play out in the desert in his first preseason game, and he was electric in that game. He's had another one, good one, most recent one since then. This kid can flat out shoot. Like, he is ready today for the NBA offensively. What I don't know is if defensively he's good enough to stay on the floor for anything more than 5 or 6 minute spurts. If he's even average defensively, though, Like, that is a weapon that this Laker team can take advantage of. That's a floor spacer that can just create even more room for LeBron and AD to operate. So I don't think they get as many wins as last year, but I am going to take the over at 42.5 and say 43.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Dalton Connect, because I just want to say something. And I held this opinion when I covered the NBA full time. You know, I obviously still follow it very closely, and I voiced some semblance of this opinion, but now I really want to drive it home. Like, the people who are out here crunching preseason tape, like, just please, like, go out to dinner, be with your loved ones. You're going to have, you know, many, many, many months of crunching tape, of looking at film, of telling me about team shot profiles. But just this new over-analysis we have of the preseason, just someone tell me anything that happened one preseason ago, let alone two. Okay,
I know nothing.
No,
I know nothing of one preseason ago.
Yeah,
I do know a good shooter though when I see it, and it's not like this is summer league, right? Like, summer league is one thing, but now we're into
don't even get me started on summer league. Okay, don't even get me started on
NBA-ish games here.
Yeah, but I just the thing we're doing with the preseason now, it's like, just wake me up when it happens in the regular season. Okay, I respect the Connect type. I do think, you know, he had some tough shooting games in the preseason that people seem to be not talking about now.
Second Phoenix game was bad.
But, but I agree. That is the kind of player. That's the kind of player they need to hit on, frankly, because something that's not talked about is, you know, they didn't even bring in Jaime Jaquez for a workout.
Yeah,
a local LA kid. Now they got Jalen. Like, they have not done a lot to their roster other than add Bronny James and Dalton Connect. So they need to hit on a guy like that. He would be important for them.
Yeah. They're also pretty bullish on Austin Reeves taking another step forward, which I can kind of buy. I think he's got that in him. I think D'Angelo Russell's going to be a problem, though, again. Like, JJ's got this more threes is good strategy, which the NBA has been adopting for years. When they are corner threes off driving kicks, I like them. When it's been D'Angelo Russell dribbling up the floor and taking a contested three with 18 left on the shot clock, not so much. And I saw him do that a bunch in the preseason. That's not high percentage threes.
A funny side plot of this NBA season is going to be how many teams look at how many threes the Celtics shot last year and try to do the same, not realizing that they do not have the Celtics personnel to do something like that.
The Celtics are taking it to another level. In the first preseason game against Denver, they shot 60 threes in the first preseason game.
I mean, can you blame them? As Joe Mazzulla said, Chris, we're all going to be dead soon. So why not go down shooting?
Joe Mazzulla's wild, man. His clips are must-see TV, that's for sure. All right, let's keep it in L.A., where the Los Angeles Clippers check in right now at 35.5. That's obviously down from the 51 wins they had last year, and certainly baked into that number is the fact that Kawhi Leonard is not playing for them right now, and they have no idea when he's going to be back playing again. Like, I've been sounding the alarm, Rohan, on Kawhi for weeks now. Like, ever since Lawrence Frank held his preseason media availability back in early or mid-September, when he said, like, Kawhi not going to be ready for the start of training camp, but we're feeling good about where he's trending. We're feeling good about the way that's going. So you're feeling good about the guy that was forced out at the end of last season with a knee injury, that had to leave USA Basketball because of a knee injury, and has now not participated in more than little at training camp because of a knee injury. Like, there is a bad moon rising in Los Angeles for these Clippers right now, who are now going to have to really lean on James Harden and this idea that their defense is going to be light years better with Kawhi Leonard out of the lineup. This is kind of what their game is going to look like, and I'm not buying it. 35.5. I'm going to assume the worst with Kawhi Leonard. I'm taking the under on 35.5.
First of all, I think this number was in the low 40s as of a week or two ago. And, you know, this was before it was announced that Kawhi was going to miss the start of the regular season. Look, we don't need to relitigate. Did the Clippers do the right thing, give up too much, blah, blah, blah. Any team that offseason would have given up and done what they had done for Kawhi and Paul George. Simply put, yes, it ended up being a failure, but there are reasons why. And reasons out of their control why it ended up being that way.
Exactly.
It happens.
Most people would have done close to the same thing.
Both can be true. It was a failure. It was a little bit out of their hands. Like, both can be true. What's really scary about this Kawhi situation First of all, I'm taking the under here. I agree. Every quote that comes out that James Harden's like, now I get to cook again, it feels more like a threat than like a promise for like the Clippers. But he's like, you guys saw me sacrifice last year. You don't know what I'm still capable
Look out.
of. I watched games 6 and 7 of the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals, James Harden. You cannot fool me. I am familiar with your game. Okay. This is like every quote that comes out that he's like, now you're getting the old James Harden, not inspiring confidence. What's really concerning about Kawhi this time, Chris, is like this is someone who already kind of his knee operates under this shroud of secrecy. But this has been an especially concerning, like it's giving me Spurs vibes. It's giving me a 17-18 vibe when he only played 9 games. Like you mentioned, we thought at the end, going back to the end of last regular season, we're like, what's going on? Is he going to play? He misses the first couple games of that Mavs series. Then he comes back, but he looks awful in those games. I mean, he looks really bad in those games. And this is someone who's one of the best playoff performers in our lifetime, in anyone's lifetime. Like, didn't look like himself. You mentioned the Team USA thing. Like, no one knew what was going on there for a little while. Like, did Team USA send him home? The Clippers said they wanted him to play, but Team USA said we did it in consultation with the Clippers. Now, Tyloo, I think, alluded to him having a setback while at Team USA training camp, which was something that didn't really come out at the time.
Well, and at the time, like Lawrence Frank, the president of the Clippers, like made this full-throated defense of keeping Kawhi on the roster, which even if you knew nothing about any setback there, like the idea that everyone inside the Clippers organization wasn't popping champagne corks at the idea of Kawhi not participating in USA basketball this summer is just lying. Like they seem so afraid to bother Kawhi or to offend Kawhi, despite the fact they just gave him a brand new 3-year extension, back in January. So I don't get what they're so afraid of, what they're so timid about when it comes to Kawhi, when it's painfully obvious that knee was a problem in May, again was a problem in July, and is still a problem right now in October. And he underwent surgery. Shams reported he underwent surgery, which the team also, Lawrence Frank was asked point blank about it and refused to answer. It's like, okay, well, if you're not saying no, I mean, we know what the answer is. Like, it is a bad situation, and I do feel for Lawrence Frank, who looks like 10 years. Remember Lawrence Frank when he was coaching the Nets? And it was like this fun young guy coaching this team, doing a great job. I covered that guy a lot, over the years.
Yeah, and I think again, he's done Detroit, a good job. I think he's done a good job, but he looks 10 years older every time I see him.
The idea of you can't reveal surgery is wild. Like, how many emails do you get a day on whatever procedure? Player X had a hand procedure. He'll be out indefinitely. Like the fact they're not revealing any of it just shows how scared they are of Kawhi and his team.
Right.
It's kind of embarrassing for the Clippers.
And I think we both have a lot of respect for Tyloo as a coach. A couple years ago when Kawhi misses the whole season, Paul George was hurt. They went only 42 games. I mean, this year already they got Harden. You got this situation with PJ Tucker hanging over the team. Like, the vibes are bad. It is a very bad vibe situation. I would hammer that under.
Yeah, 35.5 under. That feels like a safe bet right now with Kawhi's uncertainty looming out there. So what is Underdog? Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athlete performances. Compete against players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. It's 1,000 times. So turn every slam dunk into a win with Underdog. Think Kevin Durant will rack up higher than 30 points this week? James Harden will get lower than 10 assists? Cook up some entries for shots to win real cash prizes all basketball season long. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across your other favorite sports. Underdog is the place to play Pick'em, so sign up and deposit now and use promo code OPENFLOOR to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's right, $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. This week, I am going to be looking at all things Victor Wembanyama, who I think is going to have an MVP caliber season. He's got Chris Paul as his point guard. He's probably going to be Defensive Player of the Year, both ends of the floor. I'm going to be looking at Victor Wembanyama's numbers. So download the app today and use code OPENFLOOR to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 or over, 19 plus in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right, let's talk about the Houston Rockets, who right now are listed at 42.5 per the sports books. The Rockets finished at an even 500 last year. A bit of an up and down season, but I thought the Ime Udoka effect was a positive one in Houston. Alperen Sengun looked like a franchise big man. Jalen Green looked really good when Sengun was out, looked okay when he was still in. They're another year older, more mature. 42.5. What do you say about that number?
This is another great one. Like you mentioned, they went 41-41 last year. I'm going to pull a move that you pulled with the Lakers. I would take a very slight over on the Rockets, only because I do think Portland's going to be even worse this year. Utah won 31 games last year. I know you mentioned, I think Will Hardy's a fantastic coach, but I have to imagine Utah's going to go into the tank pretty hard this year somehow. I have to imagine Danny Ainge understands the value of trying to get Cooper Flagg there. So I think that there's going to be, the Grizzlies are going to take a step up, but the Clippers are going to be worse. I think the math will work out in the Rockets' favor that they'll win one or two more games. I do find it interesting how much talk there is about around the Rockets, surrounding the Rockets. I'm sure you hear it from people around the league. This idea that they want to upgrade, they want to bring in another guy. They signed Jalen Green to a kind of a strange extension today, 2 years plus an option year, which is really kind of a lose-lose for the Rockets because, the best case scenario is he's finally plays up to his potential and now they have to re-up him in 2 years as opposed to 4 when the cap is going to go up. But even Sengun is someone who I wouldn't say they're not committed to him, but you hear rumors that they would maybe include him in a trade for the right piece, blah, blah, blah. I'm just a little surprised, and I have my antenna up at this idea that they seem kind of unsatisfied with what I think a lot of people would say is a pretty exciting young core. At least Sengun is someone who people love. They have Jabari Smith as well, but a little bit of a strange kind of the rumor mill around that team, I would say.
Yeah, they were 17-11 after the All-Star break last season, averaged about 116 points per game during that stretch. So they got some things together with that group. But I feel like naturally, organically, another year with that roster, another year with the head coach, they're going to get slightly better. What does scare me a little bit with picking the over on this is that, yes, Utah might pull like an Oklahoma City from 2 years ago and go into the tank after the All-Star break. But before then, they might actually be pretty good, right? Like the Jazz are another young team.
Well, we don't have to turn it into a Jazz thing, but that's why the Lowry thing is. I love Lowry Markkinen, and I know he wants to stay in Utah. I think he is tired of being traded
for at least the rest of the year.
Yeah, but shouldn't they be tanking? What are they doing? What's the plan there?
At some point, you have to ask how, right? If you've got a team that's anchored by a 27-year-old all-star who's going to give you 20 to 25 points per game, point guard in Keontae George, who's pretty good, an overall roster. Walker Kessler kind of took a step back last year, but he's decent. You've got some pretty good pieces on that team, a really good coach that's going to make you a lot better. It's tough to go fully into the tank, that early on. So I think they're going to be competitive. I know the Spurs are going to be competitive. I think the Spurs are going to have a strong year this year. I think Wembanyama is going to have a monster season this year on both ends of the floor. And I think Chris Paul is the right fit for that team. But so I'm going to say not so confidently, I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take 43 wins for the Houston Rockets. That might not be enough to even get them into the play-in. I'm not even sure yet if that gets
the West is going to be great. I think Memphis, Memphis, I think is going to take a giant leap forward.
Yeah, they're kind of that. We're going to talk about them in a minute, so I'll put them on the shelf for now. As far as the Rockets go, though, Like if Green and Sengun can put some chemistry together and look more comfortable together on the floor, if that defense continues to improve, I hear a lot of people bullish on Reed Shepherd, not to make the preseason into anything, but a lot of people believe that Reed Shepherd is going to be worth playing time.
I mean, a lot of people saying he could have gone way higher in this draft. You know, there's Reed Shepherd conjecture out there.
Way higher than isn't he third? Like,
people were saying if they, a lot higher, I guess, is relative. But there was some talk maybe he should have gone number one.
Well, yeah, people are bullish on Reed Shepherd. They've got a deep roster. Fred VanVleet's still there. Like they've got guys. Dylan Brooks is still going to be Dylan Brooks. Like they've got a pretty good team. So I'm going to take the over on 42.5. I'm going to say they're going to win 43 games this year. You know, initially when I was doing my preseason preview, like I had Ime Udoka as the first guy I penciled in for Coach of the Year. Then I'm starting to make out the standings. And I'm like, I can't have a Coach of the Year on a team that I've got penciled into as 11th right now, or 12th, or whatever I had them there. So it's tough. It's just a tough conference. But I think they're going to take the over on those 42.5 wins.
They're an interesting team, and I do wonder how they're a team I have my eye on. Just again, you hear people talk about it. I wonder if they'll make changes to their roster and pretty significant ones by the deadline. But they might be. There were rumors they were going to try to be a cap space team. Now the Jalen Green extension cuts into that a little bit. Like they're trying to be flexible for something.
Well, yeah, they want to be that team that emerges if a superstar becomes available.
Right.
And look, I don't know that there is a team that's better equipped right now when it comes to young talent, draft capital, flexibility. Like they can do a lot of different things with that roster. So they're definitely a team to watch if somebody wriggles loose, like a Giannis type. Not that they would be able to lure Giannis, I don't think, but somebody.
Did you love Giannis trying to change the narrative? He's like, the Bucks may trade me if we don't win a championship. Did you see that?
Yeah, well,
that was hilarious.
Only if you asked to be traded.
Yeah, come on, dude.
I think Dame might be higher on that list of people who would trade before they trade Giannis.
Remember in Space Jam when like Mr. Swackhammer or whatever wants like Michael Jordan to be like the attraction on the Monstars planet, and like that the Bucks would do that with Giannis if they could. It's like, please stay here forever, sign your life rights to us, never leave. Like they are not trading you, my guy. But
yeah, they're another weird team too. We'll get into them, I think, later in the week. All right, so let's talk about the aforementioned Grizzlies, who were a disaster last year because of injuries. Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, just to name a handful. You know, some nights with the Grizzlies, and I was at some of these games, they had more people on the injured list than they had as healthy members of the rotation. It gave some.
They had like 30 guys play for them last year or something insane.
They had. I was looking this up during the preseason reporting. I think they used 51 starting lineups last year. Like it's a wild number that just underscored how banged up they were during the season. Well, the band is back this year. They've got the group that they want. They've made some upgrades around the fringes. Ja Morant is there. Marcus Smart is there. Jaren Jackson, banged up a little bit. Was he hurt with something, right? Like some
hamstring, I think. I think he's going to be out to start the season.
He'll be back. Yeah. A lot of people bullish on the Grizzlies' chances of reclaiming their place inside that top 3 or 4 in the Western Conference standings. Odds makers have them at 46.5, which is not an outlandish number. Like that's a pretty reasonable number for a team that's getting the kind of preseason hype that Memphis is getting. So what do you say to 46.5 for the Memphis Grizzlies?
I'm going to go over on the Grizzlies. The one real big piece of concern I have with this team is like Zach Edey might be their starting center game 1. Like Brandon Clark is back. He had the Achilles injury that he suffered 2 seasons ago, which was really, really brutal. When he was playing some of the best basketball of his life, he suffered that injury. He's a massive piece for them. They really need him. They need him to be successful. They need him to play big minutes. The fact that he is physically able to play in preseason is like actually something that's important, let alone his performance. I really like this team, and I like the idea of playing Bane, Smart, Morant, Jackson together. That's a great 4. I just struggle to think who that 5 is going to be. It's been an issue for them ever since they lost guys like, Kyle Anderson, Tyus Jones, etc. It's like they're still counting a lot on Santi Aldama. They're still counting a lot on Conchar. They got Luke Kennard there still. They had kind of a weird contract situation with him. Scottie Pippen Jr. was a solid signing for them, I think, but this team is like screaming to just find a dependable big, which is a lot easier said than done. Having said all that, like when Morant was healthy, they were doing a lot with kind of a similar roster. They were always near the top of the standings, and I see that coming back to form with them. I think everything you hear about Jaws, he seems to be, really locked in, really focused. I think Taylor Jenkins is, it's like the kind of newness worn off, but I think he's still a great coach. I think he's really, really good and has always maximized that team. So
had to revamp his staff though. That was always when you got to fire a lot of your assistants and bring in a whole bunch of new guys. That is never a vote of confidence.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal. At the same time, I think he's too good of a coach to get rid of, and you don't want to break up Bane, Jackson, and Morant. So what do? How else do you bring in new blood? That's my spin on it. So I'm sticking with the over.
So this is a tough one for me too. I am going to take the under on this, and I'm only going to go a shade under. I'm going to say like 45 wins for Memphis this season. I like their starting lineup a lot. Ja Morant is Ja Morant. I think Smart is going to be ideal in that multi-positional defensive role. If he gets open looks, some nights he'll knock him down. Sometimes nights he won't. He'll be Marcus Smart. Desmond Bane, proven shooter at that position. I think Jackson at the 4 is a lot better than Jackson at the 5. I just don't think he makes a lot of sense against a lot of teams playing.
He would be a great
spot.
5 if he didn't foul as much as he did.
It just doesn't work, right? And look, I am bullish on Zach Edey's chances to have an impact in his first year. He's obviously ready as far as being a rookie goes. Like, he's as ready as you're going to get. They're not going to ask him to, run the offense or even be this defensive stopper. Like, Jaren Jackson's a defensive stopper in that front court. Offensively, he's a screen setter. He's hanging around the rim, collecting buckets or passes from Ja Morant. Like, I think Zach Edey's going to have an impact. Two things that concern me, though, about Memphis. One is that I think their depth is a little bit suspect right now. Gigi Jackson's had foot surgery in September. No idea when.
That's a brutal one. He was their only bright spot really last year.
He was. He emerged. He shot well last year. I would have liked to have seen him do it in games that actually mattered. Like, he was taking 8 to 10 threes a game in meaningless games in March and April. But that's someone that could have been part of their rotation. When I talk to scouts about Vince Williams, they think he can be a contributor to that team, especially defensively. He looks like, to a lot of people, like someone that can fill a role on a winning team. So I like him in sort of a mixed spot. Luke Kennard could shoot the lights out. Can he defend to play enough minutes in that rotation? I don't know that just yet. I think their depth is a problem. And I do think perimeter shooting is a problem. Like, this is a 3-point shooting league. And outside of Kennard and Desmond Bane, where are the pure shooters out there? Where are the natural shooters that are going to space the floor for you? Like, is Ja Morant going to be a consistent shooter? Probably not. Marcus Smart, we know what he's going to have his good nights, but he's not consistent. Jackson, no. Edey, not a threat. Like, you've got a bunch of guys that are inside the 3-point line players. And historically, Rohan, that doesn't play out well in today's NBA.
I'm curious what you've heard in talking to people about Edey, because I'm trying to think of someone who's come out recently that I've heard really takes so far apart than on him. And like, there was some nice looking highlights in the preseason. He had like he was looking like prime Al Jefferson out there in some of these preseason games. No one wants to guard him in the post.
Here we go. Preseason hype. You're buying into preseason hype.
It was just funny to watch. Like, it was literally like you don't see this anymore. They don't make this guy anymore. I'm curious just what you've heard on Edey, what people are saying, because I have no idea how he's going to play out. Like, I really don't even know what to expect.
I've heard a mixed bag as well. I went to the Salt Lake City Summer League. I was the, I think, only reporter there, really national reporter at the Salt Lake Summer League. And I got to see him play a couple of times there. And sitting next to and around and talking to scouts that were there, some of them loved his potential, his size, his finishing touch around the rim. Others thought he was a little immobile, was going to get in foul trouble a lot. So it definitely was a mixed bag of emotion. I go back to what I said earlier, though. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to ask too much from him. There are going to be games where Jackson finishes in the starting lineup, where Brandon Clark is taking that other spot in the rotation. They're just going to be, you're just going to need him for 20, 25 minutes per night to take some of that pressure off of Jackson. I think he's equipped for it. I just, again, watching some of these preseason games myself, he just does have that good feel around the rim. If he can catch that ball up high and, be available to Morant and Marcus Smart going into the paint, you're going to get a lot of easy looks that way, especially with John Morant. You're going to get shots around the rim. So if you manage expectations and are kind of hoping for 9 points, 8 rebounds, I think he can produce that. I do. I think over a 25-minute per night stretch, he can give you those kind of numbers, which would be a big win for Memphis.
Absolutely. And look, they need the front court help. They need it. Who knows how much Clark's going to do right away. Offensively, I think his life's going to be very easy. Defensively is, I think, where it becomes a little bit more of a concern for me, especially because some teams are going to make him cover a lot of ground. But I hope it works, because I really liked Memphis when they were good. They were bringing a fun energy to the league on a night-to-night basis, and I hope we get to see some more of that again.
Yeah, I think somebody is going to have to emerge as another reliable shooter, someone that hasn't been as reliable in the past as part of an 8 or a 9-man rotation. I think that's key, and I think Edey's ability to give you 20, 25, because otherwise you're okay, we're going to roll Santi Aldama in there. I don't even know who else they would throw with that rotation. You got John Conchar potentially as a part of it. I'm looking at their depth chart right now. That's really it with Gigi Jackson out for the foreseeable future. So, Edey, some of their success is going to hinge on him. I'm going to take the under, though, to bring it full circle on 46.5 for the Grizzlies. I think I'm going to even 45 for Memphis this season. Last one for you is the San Antonio Spurs, which I think is going to be one of the most interesting teams in the league this season. I spent some time down in San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama, who, in addition to being one of the most interesting guys I've ever talked to, just a really introspective guy with a lot of unique thoughts, is also poised for a monster year. He had the time in the Olympics. Everybody saw that on TV. But before the Olympics and after the Olympics, he was right there for weeks at a time in that San Antonio facility, putting on muscle and adding to his game. I wrote this in the preview issue after talking to Jamal Crawford at length about his time with him. This guy wants to do my moves, and he's picking up some of the moves I made that took me years to really master. He's picking it up in a matter of days and weeks. So I think there are going to be new layers to Victor Wembanyama's game. He is, barring injury, a mortal lock to be Defensive Player of the Year. I think only his youth and inexperience kept him from winning the award last year. I don't think, if he plays 65, 70 games, he's winning DPOY, because that guy is a force defensively. And offensively, with Chris Paul, with a real point guard, passing him the ball, I think his numbers are going to go through the roof. You think about it, they played Jeremy Sochan as the starting point guard for 50-some-odd games last year before eventually pivoting to Trey Mann or Trey Jones, right? Trey, yeah. Mm-hmm. Get my Treys confused there. To Trey Jones and playing a more traditional rotation that way. Now you have Chris Paul, who is unquestionably not the player he used to be. We all acknowledge that. But is still a playmaking point guard who is going to be a threat off the pick and roll. So when I think of Wembanyama, pick and roll, pick and pop, basic bread and butter NBA plays, he is going to be significantly improved in that sense. The over-under for the Spurs right now, 35.5. I'm going way over on that one. I think they're a 500 team this year in the Western Conference. I think they're going to be that good.
I'm going to go slide over on the Spurs. First of all, shout out to you. I thought it was an iconic cover shot by our friend Jeffrey Salter that you have for Sports Illustrated. It's a great issue. Wemby, they have a really solid team. You had Devin Vassell, I think, is still a really, really good player. I know that he's like I think maybe kind of a joke to some people. Like Harrison Barnes is a really nice pickup for the San Antonio Spurs.
Yes, I agree.
That is the kind of capable veteran this team just needs. You slot him around Wemby, like the degree to which and I like Jeremy Sochan. I think he is like a solid player, and I respect the kind of point guard experiment they were trying with him.
They were trying to create Scottie Pippen in a lab, basically,
Yes.
is what they were trying to do.
But when you think of the amount of responsibility he had last year, to now he gets to actually play the role that he's meant because you have Vassell, because you have Chris Paul, because you have Harrison Barnes. Like, that is the kind of thing that allows a player to kind of grow in the best way possible. Now he can be a star in his role as opposed to trying to master all these different parts of his game that he's learning on the fly. They still have Keldon Johnson, like you mentioned, Trey Jones. I like their pieces a lot. I do think Wemby, I tweeted this, a little bit too much butter on the baguette, really kind of going after some NBA stars in some of his quotes, which I think is very funny. It's like, okay, Wemby, let's win, let's finish 500 first before we throw out these quotes. But he was so electrifying to watch during what ended up being a kind of like the Olympics was like not enough for me. I'm like, give me another week of this because of Wemby, because he's that electric. He's poised to take such a big leap. And Chris Paul, like you mentioned, he might not be the Chris Paul that got to Phoenix and they made the finals. Two things about Chris Paul. Everywhere he goes, his teams win. And two, he makes every big man look fantastic. I mean, he almost single-handedly justified, you can't say justified because Luke was in the draft, but he made the Suns look a lot smarter for taking DeAndre Ayton number 1 when he got there, okay? He kind of revitalized that guy's career. DeAndre Jordan's never looked the same since he left Chris Paul with Los Angeles. He is going to work wonders for Wemby, and you finally gave Pop like adults again. Yes, he had DeRozan a couple years ago now, but I think this is going to be kind of like a real revitalizing moment for this franchise. I think you're going to have a lot of buy-in, a lot of capability, a lot of solid guys, and guys in Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, not people who take nights off, who are going to compete every single night. So I'm maybe not as bullish as you, but I do think they're going to be better this year and better than that over.
Yeah, look, one thing that Pop told me when I was down in San Antonio was, look, last year we had to do what we had to do. Like, it was about the development, not just of Wembanyama, but of Devin Vassell, Malachi Branham, just a bunch of guys that needed time to just play and get their trial by fire. This year, he believes that the best way to develop these guys is to win more games, like just to win. And that's why they're paid for Chris Paul to come down there and be their floor general. Harrison Barnes, I agree with you. Harrison Barnes is a good player. He's never going to be an all-star, or at least not again. Or was he an all-star once? I don't know. He was a good player for a period of years. He's still a pretty good player who, if you believe the guys in San Antonio, is one of the better practice players in the NBA. And they want him to bring those practice habits down to San Antonio. So it's not just Pop down there saying, here's how we practice. It's Chris Paul. It's Harrison Barnes. It's saying these guys who've been in the league for 10 plus years saying this is how the game is played. And you're not talking about two low-level rotation players. They're two starters. Like, Chris Paul is going to start and play a significant role. Harrison Barnes is going to start and play a significant role. You plug Sochan back into a role more suitable to him, and I think he's going to be better in that spot. So, yeah, they've got some depth issues. I'm not so sold on Zach Collins anymore. Keldon Johnson, it hasn't really progressed the way I thought he was going to progress post-Olympics back in 2021. Hasn't really emerged the kind of guy that I thought he might. But this is a really, really solid team that I think is going to win over 40 games. I think they're going to be a 500 team this year in San Antonio. And for a period of time, and they might even get there, but I think they'll at least compete for a play-in spot during the year. I think it's going to be a banner year for Wembanyama. I think he's top 5 MVP this year. I do. I think that he's going to play. I think he's going to play that well on both ends that even though the Spurs are not going to have the kind of record that usually is a player on a team that, as part of the MVP discussion, usually has, I think he's going to be an outlier there. Could be like fifth, like maybe at the back end of those MVP rankings, but I think he's right there because he's going to be a dominant defensive player, and I think his game takes another big step offensively. But man, we talk about the West. That's just like, I mean, we just talked about the bottom half of the Western Conference. We haven't even talked about any of the teams that we expect to finish 1, 2, or even 3.
Yeah.
It's wild how crazy the West is going to be this year, including your Denver Nuggets, who there may be a cliff there for Denver, Rohan. This might be fall off a cliff year for Denver. Not to get too deep in the weeds on Denver, but they're a team that worries me a little bit.
I mean, talk about 12 months ago, how we felt about them coming off their finals win, and it felt like there was no answer for Jokic and Murray in the playoffs, and they had kind of like one of the most difficult starting fives and closing fives to deal with for any team in the league. I remember that summer, every preview story I did asking coaches, GMs, players, how do you stop Jokic? No one had a good answer. To now it's like they're going to start Christian Brown, and like they couldn't shoot enough threes last year and they lost KCP. I think that, again, I know you're going to talk about them more later in the week. This is just me trying to
you know what, though? Because you love them.
Yes.
Let's just bring this up now. The over-under for the Nuggets is 50.5, which would represent the lowest win total for Denver over the last 3 years. They won 57 games last year, 53 the year before. They were in a virtual tie for the number 1 seed in the Western Conference last year. So the odds makers are saying the loss of KCP combined with the improvement of teams in the Western Conference, that's enough for a 6.5 win drop, Rohan. So it's not just me that's saying there could be a cliff that the Nuggets could fall off of.
Ironically, they would have been the 1 seed had they not lost to Wemby Spurs. I think they'll win slightly over. I think 53, 52. Jokic is A, that good, and B, plays every game. Truly never takes a night off. The consistency, a huge reason why he's won so many MVPs. They are, and there's been no secret, they've now alluded to it. I think Calvin Booth, given the constraints of what their ownership situation is right the way he's thought about the big picture. How do we keep Jokic's window open? They had no chance to re-sign Bruce Brown on the money he got. They could have tried to match KCP, and I think they should have kept KCP.
Yeah.
But even KCP had nights in the playoffs last year where he didn't look as good as he did a year ago. Having said that, the issue they've had is...
And he fits.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to run plays for the guy.
Yes.
He camps out in the corner. He can still defend at a high level.
And Michael Malone loved him. Michael Malone
loves veterans. Like, yes. He loves veterans.
Yes. And he was their most counted on defender. And they lost that guy. I mean, Aaron Gordon obviously is great, but they loved what KCP brought to them defensively. They need one of these young guys to break out in a big way this year, whether it's Julian Strawther, whether it's Peyton Watson.
Christian Brown has to play well. Christian Brown is the starter now with KCP gone. But you're right, Strawther, Peyton Watson, Hunter Tyson, Zeke Naji, like somebody has got to have a breakout year.
I like the Sarge pickup for them. I think the Westbrook thing, at this point,
that's just wild. Like, I don't need to pick pile on Russell Westbrook. It's not a wild card. It's not a wild card implies there's an upside there. Like, there's not a wild card. Like, I don't want to beat up on Westbrook.
Yeah.
It's pointless. Everybody does it all the time. Like, they got him for nothing. So, like, whatever. You're taking a flyer on him. But if you're counting on Russell Westbrook to play significant minutes for your team, you're going to lose.
Agreed.
This is the way the NBA is now.
The most charitable way you could describe the Westbrook thing is as a wild card, but I don't even think you should do that. I'm firmly of the belief they have to find a way to trade Michael Porter Jr. I think it's the only way to make this work. And you got to find a way to get either it's someone else's bad contract, but you almost got to find a way to get a couple pieces back from him. I don't know if that market's out there, but to me, it's like if I'm the Nuggets, just because we were talking about this guy, I'd rather have Harrison Barnes and one more player than MPJ at this point. And maybe that's not realistic. Maybe no team would even do that, but
I talked to scouts to think MPJ is better coming off the bench, for them. Like being kind of instant offense off the bench and put somebody else, maybe more of a complete player into that starting lineup.
I will say that one of the issues with MPJ too is, and listen, they were smart to draft him. You were all over that from the moment they did it, Chris. They were smart to draft him, and in many ways they hit on him. But at the same time, he, I think, is so used to playing with Jokic, he's not like the one-on-one scorer that we thought he had the potential to be. Like, he's a great shooter, but it's not like, hey, let's toss MPJ the ball for a possession and let him cook. He sometimes tries to do that himself anyway. But I am nervous about them because I do love that team. I think it's so great the way they organically built that championship team. It so rarely happens. I mean, Jokic has never played with, I think Murray's finally been an all-star, but never been an all-NBA, never had an all-NBA teammate. Like, they lack kind of the normal resume and credentials of a repeat champion. It's just, Chris, it's shocking the way people thought they might go on a Warriors-like run after that 2023 finals because of how great Jokic and Murray looked. We haven't even talked about Murray. This is all assuming he's healthy, and we're not seeing the guy we saw in the playoffs and the Olympics. So they're in trouble, man. And I think for the first time in a long time, they got to really consider making some serious changes. I
mean, what is that change? Because
to me, it's the MPJ Jokic trade, because I think that's the only contract and piece that makes sense.
But does anybody really want that contract with
it's
that
a great
risk
question.
attached to it, and is willing to give you real value back in return? Like, I don't know if he's like the missing piece that some team is looking for. Like, he's not to some other team, at least not one I can think of, what Aaron Gordon was to Denver. Like, Aaron Gordon was that round peg, round hole type of fit, and still is. Like, Aaron Gordon is the front court KCP. Like, he's exactly what you need playing opposite Jokic. I'm not sure who's out there that's going to give, like, do you call like Orlando and say you need more scoring? Give us like a couple of your defensive-minded guys.
Try to get Gary Harris back. I mean, they have to find a contract that some team's trying to get rid of, but that player could be useful to them. That's really what it comes down to. It's like, this is going way back into the well now, but like when Nicholas Batum was making $25 million for the Charlotte Hornets and it didn't make sense, like, they have to find their version of that player. I mean, Chris, like, they barely shot any threes last year, and they lost their best three-point shooter. Like, I don't know how they're going to make that up, and I think Malone would probably like them to shoot a few more, but I don't know how they make it up. I really don't.
That's the other part of it too. Like, if you're trading Michael Porter Jr., and we're just throwing that out there, but if you trade Michael Porter Jr., you better get somebody that can shoot it back. Like, my first thought of like available guys that could be versatile impact players, like Ben Simmons jumps to mind. But you're not trading for Ben Simmons with that team because he can't shoot. And so you're not adding.
I will say that the Nets are maybe the one team, like, if they could somehow get Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith. But again,
you're not going to get Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson has to show me that he can put up these types of numbers on a winning team before I'm adding him to one. I thought Cam Johnson was
a good player on those Suns teams. I think that, they are.
Oh, what am I talking about? My bad. I apologize. I'm getting my.
You're thinking Cam Thomas.
I'm thinking Cam Thomas. Cam Johnson, yes. Cam Johnson is someone I would.
But a lot of teams want him. A lot of teams want him. A lot of teams want Dorian Finney-Smith. So I don't know how they'd want to deal with the Nuggets. But I will say the one thing they have working for them is I don't think OKC is the only potential to be a real juggernaut in the West, and I think every team after them has flaws, and the Nuggets are in that group.
OKC has that 65-win game potential.
Yep.
And is also sitting on that Clipper lottery ticket right now.
Unbelievable. Like, dude, I mean, they could, them getting Caruso for what they got Caruso for is just
but actually, that's not a bad deal, though, for Chicago to get, like, 21-year-old Josh Giddey, who, at least in his mind, thinks he's worth $30 million per year. Like, Josh Giddey was miscast as the point guard with that team. Like, you don't need a Josh Giddey when you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But Josh Giddey's a really good player. So you gave up value, but you had this incredible depth of value there. So, and like, they can still do that again. Like, I doubt they make, guard Jalen Williams available. But that guy's, you saw the NBA GM survey. Like, everybody's talking about him as being one of the breakout stars of next year. Like, you've got some. I don't know if I go like all in on like a Giannis, like, or I keep using Giannis as the reference point, but that's the only superstar I can think that might be, available. But like, you can do whatever you want if you're Oklahoma City. Plus, sitting on that pick, which could turn out to be what Cooper Flagg, is it Ace Bailey, the kid from Rutgers? Like, there's just so many, potential talents down there. It's wild. It'll be fun to watch, though, especially in the Western Conference, Rohan. Good stuff, man. Always appreciate you taking the time to join me here. Follow Rohan on Twitter at Rohan Nadkarni and check him out over at NBC News. Good to catch up, my friend.
Anytime, Chris.